Good evening and welcome to Keeping Watch, a live stream series where we expose what's happening in Florida politics this week. I'm Natasha Sutherland, the Black Constituency Communications Director with the Florida Communications and Research Hub. Joining me tonight are Senator Victor Torres from State Senate District 15 in Osceola and Orange County, Representative Carlos Guillermo Smith from State House District 49 in Orange County, and Paula Muñoz, Director of Campaigns at the Florida Immigrant Coalition, to talk about the anti-immigrant bills that are advancing in the Florida legislature this session. I'll kick it over to Senator Torres to introduce himself.
Thanks, Natasha, and it's a privilege and an honor to be here before you today as a state senator here for Central Florida, representing parts of Orange County and all of Osceola County. The first Puerto Rican state senator here in the state of Florida, New York Rican, peleando para la gente, luchando para la gente. As you can see the flag behind me, hey, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Latino all the way. I fight for what I believe in, and I fight for our people. And believe you me, I didn't just start yesterday. It's been a career, and I have family who you may know, Amy Mercado, who's a property appraiser in Orange County. So the fight goes on, the struggle never stops, but I'm here to speak tonight and tell you from my passion how I feel about what's going on to our people.
Rep Smith?
Hi, good evening. Thank you all for this opportunity. Bienvenidos a todos. I'm Carlos Guillermo Smith. I represent Florida House District 49, Distrito 49. That is in East Orlando. So I represent the UCF area in the Florida House of Representatives. My pronouns are he, him, él. And I was elected to the Florida House in 2016. We are both, as I can see from Senator Torres's office background, joining you from Tallahassee. Actually, we are up here in the middle of the 2022 legislative session, certainly standing up and fighting for our community, luchando por nuestra comunidad, como siempre. Ustedes saben, we are here in the thick of it all during a crazy legislative session. I know that we have a lot to discuss tonight, so I'm just really appreciative of the opportunity to be here.
All right, and Paula.
Hi, so my name is Paula Muñoz, and I serve the Florida Immigrant Coalition as their Director of Campaigns. We're an organization that serves 60 plus member organizations across the state, and we fight for the rights of all people, including immigrants. And I myself, I'm an immigrant from Colombia. I came in as an asylum seeker, fleeing war. And so this is something that's very passionate to me and here to definitely fight for my community and our communities together.
Well, I'm really excited to have y'all here. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I just wanted to remind those of you that are tuning in that there will be an opportunity to ask our guests questions at the very end. But in the meantime, feel free to drop those questions in the comment section or any comments you may have at any point during this live stream. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move it on over to legislative session. So we'll start with Senator Torres. So legislative session is something that for a lot of people can feel confusing and overwhelming, especially if you're not familiar with the process. So before we talk about the anti-immigrant bills, Senator Torres, can you briefly explain what legislative session is and how does it impact everyday Floridians?
Well, Natasha, thank you for that question. It's ironic that we come up here for 60 days. But before coming up here for the 60 days, we have committee weeks that we come up here to meet in our committees and learn about bills that are being represented or being presented during session. So I'm in the Military Veterans and Veterans Committee. I'm also on the Family, Children, and Elders Committee. I'm on the Oversight Government Committee, and I'm on the Commerce and Tourism Committee. But besides that, I feel that the bills that are flowing through up here in Tallahassee, especially in the Senate, affect our community and affects our education, our schools, affects your livelihood, affects the everyday worker out here. It affects your homeownership. What's going to affect you on taxes, on your property taxes, possibly. And also, as you look at it, um, we're the lowest wage state in the nation. And when people say, how can I afford a new house or how can I pay my rent? These are the things that affect our community every day. And we try to get through the Zadowski funds, the money, the sales and the SHIP program. But guess what? We're being priced out. You can't afford anymore. You can't afford that. First-time homeowners to buy a home. It's out of reach. The rents. We're having people call the office that when they go to renew their lease, they get bombarded with increases on their rent. Now, for that, I have a bill. I have 3 bills that were never heard. Why? Because one is rent control. Where I grew up in New York, we saw rent control apartments where families were working and are able to afford a decent place to live. The second bill I had was for pregnant moms and small children that prevented them from getting evicted immediately and giving them a 90-day extension to keep them in their apartments or their homes. And the last bill was the registry, like the courts will say you have to pay what you owe to the rent guy or the landlord. You will pay to the court. If you can't pay 3 months rent or 6 months rent, the court shall allow you to go up there and testify and tell them what happened. What were the circumstances that you lost your income and how this affected you? But these are the things that I've tried to fight for, and that's how session affects an everyday citizen and what we're doing here in Florida.
Thank you so much. And Rep. Smith, I'm just wondering, for you, has anything felt particularly different about this legislative session?
Sure. What feels really different about the 2022 legislative session is that this is one of the most partisan sessions that we've seen in quite some time. Listen, we come up here every year for 60 days to try to focus on the issues really impacting the people of Florida. Senator Torres said it best: affordable housing, expanding access to healthcare, making sure that we are doing right by Floridians as it relates to addressing the teacher shortage in our schools, fully supporting our high quality public education system and making sure we have a high quality public education system. What I don't think everyday Floridians expect us to do when we come here is engage in 24/7 culture wars that do nothing to improve the lives of the people in Florida. For example, bills like the Stop Woke bill, which basically turns Florida into a censorship and surveillance state by restricting how folks can teach history, teach race in our schools, and in the workplaces as well, with Big Brother looking over your shoulder, making sure that you don't talk about or engage in corporate trainings related to sensitive racial topics. This is not what happens in free states. And we saw the Don't Say Gay bill as well, which is still moving through the Senate, which censors the existence of LGBTQ people in our schools. This is all very concerning, but I want to make sure that folks know that we are focused on the issues that really matter. We're not focused on scoring political points by targeting vulnerable immigrant children, as we know is happening in legislation we're going to be talking about today. We really want to help address these issues that Floridians are facing rather than engage in these culture wars.
Wow. Yeah. I wish we had enough time to talk about and address, all of those important points that you both have brought up. I mean, with the kinds of things that are passing through Florida legislature, and the bills that aren't really addressing everyday Floridians' needs. So unfortunately, we're going to have to just stick with the one bill or these set of bills today. But it just really gives a lot of us something to think about when it comes to what's happening up here. So let's talk about these anti-immigrant bills that we have going on right now. Paula, can you tell us a little bit more about what's in these bills, and are they expected to pass in the legislature this year, you think?
So basically, HB 1355 and SB 1808 would broaden the sanctuary city definition to include any policies which limit law enforcement from providing state agency with information about someone's immigration status. We've seen this tried before, right? And it was struck down in many ways through the legal courts, as it has very unconstitutional provisions. So aside from, again, trying to mandate 287G agreements, which would essentially deputize police enforcement to carry immigration custom enforcement warrants and jobs, it would also prohibit and constrict common carriers from being able to transport, for example, unaccompanied children. So it would limit the support that agencies such as Catholic Legal Charities and other service providers are able to reunify these unaccompanied children to their families in Florida. So it would create, again, a more hostile environment, and that is we've seen being used, and it's being used by the governor to really further push his anti-immigrant agenda in the state, instead of focusing on issues, as mentioned, like housing, healthcare, and also right now, the current pandemic that we're in. So this bill is extremely dangerous, again, for children. It also includes harm with Afghan evacuees, unaccompanied children, family members of active U.S. military service members, asylum seekers, trafficking victims. It's looking to basically constrict the contracts of common carriers and from them being able to provide, again, this support for these communities.
Wow. Yeah. So obviously doesn't sound like a very good bit of legislation. Rep Smith, could you tell us what the update is from the House and whether or not that's moving in the House?
Sure, Natasha, and thank you for that question. Unfortunately, I saw this anti-immigrant bill come through the State Affairs Committee that I serve on in the House. The bill has moved since then, and it's already moved through House Judiciary, and it's ready for the House floor. But I think it's important to underscore what Paula mentioned before as far as the negative consequences of this bill in particular, because it's a sweeping bill. I think it's kind of strange, too, just to kind of start off, because this bill builds upon a bill that we passed a couple years ago in the Florida legislature, which was the, so-called ban on sanctuary cities, even though sanctuary cities don't exist in the state of Florida. That was a racially motivated law. And if you don't believe me and you think that might not be the case, listen to the courts. That's what the courts have actually said about parts of this law that were enacted. That's why some parts of that law are not in effect right now, because the courts have put a stay on the impact of the so-called sanctuary cities law passed a couple of years ago. So with this bill, so it's just kind of a strange time for them to be building upon a law that is currently tied up in the courts. But basically what this bill does is it requires for all local law enforcement agencies to enter into this 287G agreement, which is really a contract or an agreement that they sign with ICE to cooperate with ICE on different things that they are doing. But what we have found is that this is actually dangerous. It's dangerous because the more local law enforcement is involved in helping ICE and doing the job of ICE, which is not the job of local law enforcement, the less inclined our communities are to do things like report crimes. If you see something, say something. They are fearful of going to law enforcement for fear of deportation. That is the reason why they are fearful. And so the Cato Institute, which, by the way, is a very conservative think tank. They are not left-leaning, but they study issues like immigration and the policies and how they impact our communities. The Cato Institute has found that the voluntary reporting of crimes decreases significantly in these communities that have these 287G agreements that are expanded under this proposal. The bill also really makes our communities less safe by expanding those agreements. But what it also does, which has been kind of the center of this legislation, is it punishes common carriers, basically airline companies, bus companies, any transportation company really is what a common carrier is. It punishes them for doing the work of the federal government, helping place immigrants, including unaccompanied children in Florida, where they can seek temporary shelter while they're waiting to be reunited with family in particular. This is not a brand new thing. This is something that happened under the Trump administration, now under the Biden administration, happened under many administrations where these common carriers work with the Office of Refugee Settlement to help immigrants find shelter, immigrants who are supposed to be here, who are allowed to be here. But because Governor DeSantis is on this racist kind of agenda where he's using vulnerable immigrant children and other vulnerable communities to really pursue his political ambitions at any cost, what we see is this racially motivated bill that we've seen extreme public opposition to, not just from Democrats like myself and from Senator Victor Torres, but from faith-based groups, from Catholic organizations that do this important work of making sure that we're finding safe and stable homes for immigrants, for unaccompanied children, and making sure that we're doing right by these humans who, by the way, the supporters of this bill characterize the legal transport of immigrants into the state of Florida as human smuggling. It is not human smuggling. It's totally legal. It's humane. That's why these faith-based groups work with the federal government and with the Office of Refugee Resettlement to provide shelter when shelter is needed. And this is nothing more than just throwing red meat at the base to get more xenophobia stewing in the state of Florida, more anti-immigrant sentiment as we've seen for years, but particularly in the last few months. And it does nothing to help the people of Florida or keep them any more safe.
Thank you for that very detailed explanation. Senator Torres, do you have any updates for us on these bills in the Senate?
Well, right now we haven't. It came through the committee the other day. I was watching it. The presenter of the bill, Senator Beam, and I was astonished at his interpretation and what Representative Carlos Smith just said on the transporting and looking for these children. And he said, well, these aliens are coming in late at night in flights that aren't chartered, and we don't know where they're going because they land in secret spots. And I'm going like, what is this man talking about? The senators in that committee, said, no, Senator. These are chartered by the federal government. These kids are asylum. They are protected. They land in airfields, they land in airports that have the sponsors waiting for them to transport them to a safe location and to take care of them. As a Puerto Rican, como un puertorriqueño, te voy a decir ahora, I'm going to say now to all of you out there, I don't want to be labeled, and I don't feel that our kids are not aliens. They didn't fall out of the sky like these guys promote. You know, to me, it's disturbing. We come to this country to work, to look for a better quality of life, and these guys have the audacity to label our kids, you know, and it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop. This isn't a committee. I'm watching it, and we as a community, everybody out there, you need to stand up and fight. You need to stand up and fight like hell, because this year you can change everything that's going on up here. No me importa. You are violating the rights of children. You are taking away what's going on in the world. Look at Ukraine. Look what Russia is doing to Ukraine. It's not stopping one dictator from trying to take over another country. And we have to look at what's going on in our own state. And we have to take care of our children. So I filed an amendment, because when it comes over here to the Senate floor, similar to the one that Carlos Smith had in the House, I'm proud to stand tall with my colleagues in the House or in the Senate to fight this. But yo creo it's time to hear from our community, ustedes allá afuera, who are silent. Don't be silent anymore. Step up your game. Help us fight this. How? Vete y vota, no te quejes. That's the bottom line. Thank you again, Natasha.
Thank you, Senator. Yeah, that's something that we're definitely gonna go ahead and get right to. But before we do, Paula, I wonder if you could kind of give us, kind of an explanation for why, Floridians and really the rest of the country, why that we should be paying attention to these bills, how it's going to affect Floridians, specifically, the immigrant population in Florida. So if you could just speak to that a little bit, please.
Yes, of course. I mean, as both the senator and representative mentioned, it's essentially like slowly eating away at the rights of people, right? It's creating mandates on localities to basically force them to do this type of bidding, right? It creates more of an issue around criminalization, right, that we've seen in communities. Also fear, again, of people being able to reach out for support or help. And also it creates, again, like aside just from the rhetoric, it creates real consequences for people who are right now, like from children being able to like find refuge, being able to like be reunited with their families, and a pretext that is not real, right? It's the spread of misinformation that continues to be pushed through our legislature, that pushes these anti-immigrant bills forward, and people are believing it, right? Like people are believing the rhetoric, which causes real dangers for our immigrant communities who are trying to work, who are farm workers, who are teachers, who are healthcare workers that are right now are saving our lives, right? Like these are communities that right now are part of Florida. They are Florida. And the fact that this is continuing with that narrative to demonize immigrants and also like organizations that are trying to support them, that's gonna continue that rippling effect of hate in our state, and it's gonna continue to again push these unconstitutional bills that continue again to be struck down with the courts, to continue to they're being used for political gain. And so people should care about this, because right now a lot of issues are being impacted, right? Like a lot of issues are being like attacked, a lot of rights are being attacked, and every session it's just going to continue if we don't unite and try to stop these harmful bills from passing.
Yeah, it sounds like we really need to do what we can, right, to combat these divide and conquer strategies, that the leaders in the legislature seem to insist on putting forward. So this next question is really for all three of you, but we can start with Paula to answer it. So for the folks that are watching and for Floridians as a whole who aren't in Tallahassee, what can they be doing or what should they be doing to speak up against this harmful Republican bill?
Right. So, I mean, a lot has already been done, like that we've been doing, right? We've seen our community up there in Tallahassee in the middle of a pandemic. So definitely continuing to drive the calls, to drive the demands. We've seen that right this week, right? Tomorrow, it's going to be the first hearing, I believe, from the Senate. And then it's going to most likely be voted on Thursday. And so it's really a critical time, right? We have 2 weeks left of session to be able to stop this. And so we really need as many people to call their senators, right? To call their senators to make sure that they oppose these bills, as well as when it hits the House, right? We need to make sure we're holding our electeds accountable to make sure that they're opposing and being champions against these bills.
Senator, do you have anything to add to that?
She hit it right on the head. It's getting the people to be energized, to fight the fight, not to give up. Call, email, call your senators, call the senators who are supporting this bill. Tell them that you're going to come out and vote. It's all about turnout. It's about grassroots. It's about nosotros, the majority that's growing here in the state of Florida. Queremos pelear, y esas son las cosas que pasan con nosotros. We sit back, ay, bendito. No, step up your game, man. This is the time to do it. This is the time to fight. Ponte los pantalones. Latino.
Rep Smith?
Agreed. And I would also say that I think it's really important for folks who can't make it to Tallahassee or don't know what opportunities they have to really engage in opposition to this really xenophobic, racist, anti-immigrant bill that is really going to harm a lot of vulnerable people. Follow organizations like the Florida Immigrant Coalition, like FLIC, and we know that Paula is doing a great job, helping to represent them. Also, Florida Watch, Florida Rising. These are groups that are actually going to help steer you in the right direction. If you follow them on Instagram, on Facebook, or on Twitter, they are putting out calls to action that can help you really focus your efforts. What senators do we need to call? What state reps do we need to get in contact with? Is there a way for me to send a letter to the editor at my local newspaper so that I can voice my opposition to bills like this? And I think that working with following those organizations like FLIC, like Florida Rising, and others who are doing everything that they can to oppose this bill can really help center your advocacy and what needs to happen next.
That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to just go ahead and emphasize exactly what Representative Smith was just saying. Plenty of organizations like Florida Watch and the Comms Hub and, FLIC that are working really hard every day to ensure that folks understand what's happening in Tallahassee, and finding ways for you to get involved. And of course, as we've said in previous live streams, every senator or representative that's been on has said, please call them. Email them, make your voice heard. If you can come to Tallahassee, right? There is an opportunity for everyone to get involved in any way that they are able to, so please do that. Thank you all so much. That's unfortunately all the time we have for today. Thank you, everybody that has joined us, live. And thank you, Senator Torres, Representative Smith, and Paula with the Florida Immigrant Coalition for taking the time to explain how this bill would impact our communities. As you all know, we have a lot of work to do in Florida, but be sure to like this video, share it with your friends and family so that they can stay up to date on what's happening in Tallahassee. Tune in next Tuesday at 6:30 p.m. for our next episode of Keeping Watch. Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you again.
Thank you all.